Okay, so normally I'd come up with a shape myself, but I want you guys to be able to use one of your favorite jerk baits if you're going to follow along in this process. And so here I've got one of my favorite jerk baits. I've used this lure a lot. I know that it works in the water, so this is going to be my starting point. So I'm just going to trace it out, get the shape cut out, and then glue it to the block of wood we're going to use for the rest of the project. In case you're wondering what kind of wood this is, I'm not really sure. We bought my son a new bed recently, and instead of throwing out the old wood or using it for firewood or something, I cut it into a bunch of small pieces, and I'm going to use it to make masters. I think it might be pine, but I'm just not sure. Here I'm just going to move over to the bandsaw and cut the body of the lure out. And I'm also going to try not to lose a finger in the process. Here I've used a 10mm stencil to draw the eye, and I'm marking a center point on the eye that I will later use to align the drill bit. Okay, this is hands down one of my favorite tools in the shop, and it's something that my father-in-law just made. He's one of those guys that can just make anything. Normally I'd use a disc sander to do this, to smooth out the body and sand it out. But I'm going to use this tool that I call my cylinder sander, just to smooth out the body, round it out, get all those rough edges out, and have a smooth surface to work with when we start the carving. Now I'm going to drill a hole at the center point of the eye that I marked earlier, completely through the body. If I don't do this, then later on when I want to drill the eyes out, it's going to be very difficult to get them aligned. Just going to use a ruler now to mark a spot dead center on the bait. And with that spot that I mark, I will draw a line dead center around the bait, which I will use later in the build to drill hook hangers and line ties. I'm going to use 4x6 HP photo paper. If anybody in the past ever bought an HP printer, then you bought the cartridges, the ink cartridges, they always came with this photo paper. So I had this stuff laying around, and I can add or remove sheets of it to adjust the height of my pin to reach that dead center mark, and then just push the bait around the pin to make that dead center line. Using my example jerkbait, I'm just going to measure out the width of the body from head to tail. I'll then use these measurements to mark spots on the blank with which I can draw the profile. So now I'm going to use a ruler just to connect those spots that I marked out earlier. I'm going to do this on both sides, and that's going to give me guidelines, one on each side, at the perfect width, which I can use later to draw the profile. Now I just want to mark the spots at which I want to drill the holes for the hook hangers and line ties. And here I'm going to use a drill bit to make pilot holes for the hook hangers and line ties. And now I'm just going to drill out those pilot holes. I don't really need to drill out a hole on the belly for a hook hanger, but I'm going to do so because later when I mold this bait, that will give me a spot on the resin mold that I can see and use to actually install the hook hanger where I need it to be. Now I'm going to draw some chamfer lines on the outsides of the body. I'm going to use these to carve down and shape the profile. The width you make these depends on the profile you're trying to achieve, but for the purposes of this example jerkbait I'm using, I think these are going to be good. Now I'm going to carve down to the chamfer lines. Between the chamfer lines and the profile lines I drew on the top of the body earlier, I'm just going to carve down to them and begin shaping the bait. So this is a little trick I use when sanding. I use duct tape and I put that on the back of the sandpaper to make it more durable during the sanding process. And here I'm just going to start sanding the body down, sanding the profile, and shaping this thing out. I'm going to start here with 40 grit and then move all the way down to 320. Anyone else tired of sanding yet? Yeah, this takes a while. Time to drill out the eyes now, and using that hole that I drilled through the body earlier, that's going to mean these things will be perfectly aligned when I go to install the eyes. The first couple of lures that I made, I actually didn't drill that pilot hole, and then later when I went to install the eyes, it turned out looking like a googly-eyed monster of sorts, so it's important to drill that pilot hole so you get the correct alignment. Alright, time to make the hook hangers. I'm going to do that with 1mm diameter 316L stainless steel wire. Now because this is a master, I'm not actually going to use these hook hangers to install hooks or use them as a line tie. They're going to be used for alignment when I put this thing in the molding clay later. Now I'm just going to secure this thing in the drill and finish it out. And using some 5-minute epoxy, I'm just going to install the hook hangers and the nose and the tail. If you guys are wondering why I'm always changing clothes, it's because I usually do my lure building after work and when the kids are in bed. So it usually takes me about a week to build one of these things. And if I wore the same clothes the entire time just for the sake of the continuity of the video, that would be disgusting. Using some thin super glue, I'm just going to seal the wood so that no moisture can get in. If you've ever seen the Marling Baits channel, Nate Marling does this using his finger to spread the super glue around. I tried that one time and I'll never do it again because I just don't like the feeling of having a finger that feels like petrified wood. And if you haven't seen the Marling Baits channel, go check it out. He's really good. Actually, he and a couple others got me started in this hobby. So if you're into building lures or watching people build lures, then you've probably seen this before. I'm just going to use some Legos to build up a frame that I am then going to put molding clay in and pour the mold into. I just turned the heaters on in the shop and it's pretty cold, and this clay, being as cold as it is a little hard to work with. So I'm just going to use this piece of wood here to kind of speed up the process and flatten it out. Okay, this molding clay is a pain in the butt to shape once you let it get cold, so heat gun to the rescue. Just going to clean up the edges here and get everything as smooth and as flat as possible. Now I'm just going to mix up some Type 3 silicone from Troll Factory. I like this brand. It sets up well, it cures fast. So I don't know the volume of the mold, so I'm going to have to eye this, and if I need to mix more, I can. Okay, I need to pause here for a second because I just realized that I forgot to hit record on the section of the video where I actually put the bait into the clay. So let me explain what I did. I laid the bait into the mold on top of the clay right in the middle, and then I just used a screwdriver to trace the outline of the bait, removed the bait, and then dug out the clay inside that outline so that the bait would fit evenly and level in the mold. And that's where those line ties that I made, the hook hanger and the line tie that I made earlier, came into play. After I installed those, I had something to use to get the bait evenly in the mold. And now I'm just going to pour the silicone into the mold. I'm going to pour a little bit at first and allow any bubbles that might form to come to the surface. Once that's done, then I will pour the rest of the silicone into the mold. This stuff kind of reminds me of Pepto-Bismol, but I wouldn't advise drinking it because it will likely kill you. So kids, how about we don't turn drinking silicone into the next viral challenge, okay? Oh God, what have I done? Somebody's gonna try it. I know it. Okay, looks like all the bubbles are out. So it's been about 8 hours. The silicone's cured. It says 24 hours on the bottle, but that's temperature dependent. So this stuff in warmer temps can cure pretty quickly. So let's crack this thing open and see what it looks like. So now we just want to clean this thing up really well. We don't want to pour the other half on top of these little chunks of clay. And also I realized I made a mistake here. What I should have done when the bait was in clay was use the blunt end of a 10mm drill bit to push holes into the clay all the way around the bait. That allows the second half of the mold to release easier, and I didn't do that. I forgot to. So I can fix that by taking this thing over to my drill press and just drilling some holes in this side of the mold. One thing I've learned over the past couple years making baits is that learning how to recover from mistakes can be the difference of either scrapping a project or ending up with a final product that you're proud of. So now that I've got those hole drills, I'm just going to build up the Lego frame again and pour the second half of the silicone into the mold. Before I do that, I'm going to use some Vaseline, just spread that around in the holes on the bait to make the silicone release easier once it's done. And just as I did previously, I'm just going to mix up some silicone and pour that into the mold and let it cure. Okay, let's see what the final product looks like. So there we go. Now we can make as many copies of this bait as we want. In part 2, we'll be pouring the resin, installing the hardware, and airbrushing this thing out. So be sure to check that out as soon as it's released. Thanks for watching.